Good morning, everyone. It is 8:02 Pacific Standard Time where I am. Again, my name is Bobby Mann. Thank you all so much for just sharing a little joy with me on a Friday morning. I'm going to be subbing in today for Kristen Hassan as she is traveling. So honored to be here with the Maddie's team. Looks like we have quite a few people, over 100 already on this call. But really what we all show up for is a little bit of Feel Good Friday from Mary Smith. So I'm going to toss it right over to her.
Thanks, Bobby. No pressure. So first of all, I want to say good morning to Jay Torado. It's really great to see you, a fellow Californian.
Good
I
morning.
hope you are enjoying the rain just like we are here. And Rebecca, awesome to see you guys. Hey, Stacy LeBaron, the conference that you put on last weekend was again amazing. I was there on Sunday. And I just am totally a fangirl of Sterling Davis. So giving him an opportunity to share his ideas, thoughts, worldviews, dreams, all of it was just great. And the two guys, Josh and Noah, did an excellent job talking to us about what it means to try to make the world a little better place. And my new favorite person is Mary Tan. That was just great. Stacy, you really do such an awesome job interviewing people. We should always let you do that. Hey, my friend Kenny Lamberti is here. Great to see you. We'll be hearing from Kenny in a minute when we get to national updates. This past week, I had the opportunity, the privilege of interviewing Allison Cardona from LA County Animal Services. Allison told us her story of what it means to be a Latina in animal welfare in California and what she has experienced and what her family has experienced. I really urge you all to check out the Candid Conversations and especially Allison's talk. Also, she's been putting a lot of great information in our forum, and I would invite you all to check that out as well. I think I saw Mike Bricker on the call. Mike was part of our Adoption Challenge huddles. And with Mike Bricker, a huddle definitely becomes a cuddle. So if you want to be cuddled and get some great information about how to open up the adoption process so that everyone can participate in your organization's mission, check him out. Our very own Kelly Dewar from Maddie's Fund and Kristen Hassan from AMPA are going to be doing a presentation on Wednesday, the 27th, ensuring transparency while keeping marketing and adoption counseling separate. Okay, Allison, I think I've handled all of my duties this morning. Allison is so great. She always gives me a good prep for that. Yep. So I don't really feel very inspired today. It's raining in Northern California. It's definitely needed. My hope is that firefighters in California that have spent the last probably 6 months dealing with fires all across the state are finally able to close the fire season and head for home to see their families. So I think the one thing I would just like to share with everybody is to remember that the work that we do is ongoing. There's always going to be an animal life that needs to be saved. But one of the things that we learned is that animal welfare can't just be about animals. In fact, maybe we should change animal welfare to a term that I think I heard recently that was talking about the human animal. And actually, I heard it from my friend, Kenny Lamberti, and he talked about the human animal well-being and how important that is. And I think that's really where we should be starting from, because we're going to continue to hear this message, I think, for the rest of the time that we do these calls, that both ends of the leashes matter and that we have to really deal with people and pets. And one of the messages that I took away from Allison's talk earlier this week was that she came to animal welfare from a marketing background. And it was pretty quickly when she got into animal welfare that she realized that even though we call it animal welfare, it was really all about people. And I think taking that message to heart can do so much to help us really fundamentally change the way we do the work that we do, and the outcomes then will follow. So with that, I'm out. I hope everybody stays safe. And if you're in Northern California, dry. Thanks.
Mary Smith, you know what, I'm enjoying this little bit of drizzle that we have right now. The lake where I live has been very empty, so it's nice to see a little bit of water filling our cups. But I'm going to share an insecurity with all of you because this is a safe place. You all are all family. I decided to trim my beard yesterday, and I didn't realize that the official beard of animal welfare, Kenny Lombardi, was going to be on this call. And now I just feel very freaking insecure. So to kick off our national updates, Kenny, I'd love to toss it to you and the Care family to get us going.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Bobby. No, it's okay. Beard envy is a real thing. So at first, I'm just excited. I was excited when Mary offered to come on. And if you see, I'm actually outside. I'm here with a bunch of my comrades here from Care in Philly, and we're out organizing in live time right now. We're stopped on a city block in North Philly, not far from ACT. And we're here going door to door. We're canvassing, we're outreaching, we're trying to engage people, identify new care center operators. What we're doing, and one of the foundations of what care is to just kind of uncover and shine light on the great people in these underserved communities that are already doing the work. There's already thousands of basically animal welfare activists, advocates, spay neuter ambassadors, foster families already working in communities across America that we just haven't identified yet. We haven't engaged yet. So we're here doing that live today in Philly. We're out canvassing. We're going to meet with people. We're going to meet new people. We're going to meet some old friends from a decade ago when I worked here in Philly, when I was with HSUS. And so we're canvassing today. Our care centers, if you're not completely familiar with what they are yet, they're really just a way to help create structure, bring resources to people, those people that I just described that are already doing the work in these communities that really haven't been engaged effectively, and give them the ability to network with each other so they can become a collective force to really elevate their own community. So the burden of that work doesn't need to fall on kind of external forces in animal welfare. They already exist within the community. We're trying to bring those people together, bring new people to the table. And what we did, something really excited I wanted to share today, we started something called the Caregivers Circle. And it's something that's really easy to join. And because there's so many national people on this call, so many people here I know already, or I've known or indirectly over the years, this is that opportunity to kind of live up to our words, this idea of being on the same team and working together. There's a lot of great conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion, about community engagement, something I know I've personally been passionate about for several decades. And if we really care about it, it shouldn't matter what org is leading the charge in that, right? We should be wanting to engage communities. So this caregiver circle that you can join, and then Jen's going to be adding in the chat, you can text 52886. No, text circle to 52886. I'm sorry. So text circle to 52886, and you can join the caregiver circle. You'll see right now, it'll also have different campaigns. Right now, we're doing some breed specific stuff. We're also going to do stuff about scholarships for BIPOC students to vet school, about connecting resources to people in underserved communities, but it all feeds back into this circle. And the circle is just a place, it's a movement, it's a way to bring actual inclusion, real diversity to this industry. And we're going to have monthly calls. We're going to have a newsletter. We're going to have regular calls to action. And we're going to also offer opportunities for people to connect. So the Caregiver Circle, again, is really something. I don't think it's a hybrid of many other projects me and others have worked on, but to really engage communities. We're also here, Emancipet, who's a great friend and kind of partner of Care, and many of you know really well, has a location here in Philly. So what we're doing is we're trying to connect the actual community, that underserved community where Emancipet is, to bring those services to people and bring our care center operators and our care circle givers, activists and advocates to be partners with Emancipet. So the community connects back to a service provider here. We're really excited. It's a burgeoning partnership. They're friends, they're allies, they're comrades, but they're also a service provider, which Care really isn't. So we need to have those service providers be good, trusted partners in the community, deliver good, non-judgmental, kind, compassionate service to this community where those services typically don't reach. So we're here working with Emancipet to build that partnership. We're canvassing and working in the community. We're meeting with amazing people. We've got a lunch met with a guy who many of you heard me tell the story, named DeVell. A decade ago, was breeding pit bulls in Philly, became a spay neuter advocate. We're reconnecting with him, which is super exciting. We've got videographers and people who are out rescuing dogs, trapping cats. So we're here today in Philly being about it. You know what I mean? To keep it real, we're not just talking about it. We're not just doing a webinar. We're on the block. We're on the street. We're in Philly. We're going to be in DC tomorrow. We're in Atlanta. We're going to be on the West Coast. We're going to be in a lot of places. So I wanted to just take the time to share that this caregiver circle, it's new. It's just getting launched. You can go to our care website. You can go to the link in the chat that I think Jen added. But most importantly, what I want to encourage us all to do is start to live up to our word and really think as one team. If you really want to engage communities, you really want to create a more diverse and equitable human animal well-being movement, share the circle, man. We're not competitors. We're all on the same team and we're all have the same mission in theory. Let's have it in practice. So again, I'm so grateful you guys let me have a few minutes on here. Get that out there, share that, put it on social, take one day on your social pages and share, text circle to 52886. You can get it right off the care website. Let's do this together. There's too many people, too many amazing people who are just left out of the equation, and we want to put them into the equation. So that's what we're doing. Again, incredibly grateful, Mary, Bobby, everyone else who gave us a few minutes here. I'm going to go hug Mike Bricker and get back to the streets, get back to meeting all these amazing people. So thank you.
Kenny, I love it.
Million times over.
For folks want to know how to get people excited in just 54 seconds, I encourage you to click on the Circle website because Kenny's video is exceptional. And you know what? Let's be actionable about this, folks. So I myself have my phone in my hand and I have this number dialed. I encourage all of you to do this right now. We're going to hold space for about 30 seconds. I'm pressing enter. And by the way, Kenny, the map, the visuals on the website, just showing the growth of it on Facebook, all amazing. Like you said, teamwork makes the dream work. And we're honored to be a part of your team, brother.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
everyone.
And get one more Bricker hug on live camera for us as we continue on with national updates. So any other orgs, please speak up.
Got to get a shot of the rest of the care team here. We're out in force, so we appreciate you all.
Thanks, Kenny. We can keep it going for a few more minutes with some additional national updates.
It's Kathy from Canada. And just a brief note, you can't register yet, but you're gonna wanna register for the Summit for Animals when it comes up and should be coming up in the next few weeks or so. The registration, it's being held in May. It's a hybrid event. So 3 of the 4 weeks in May, there'll be online opportunities, but week number 2, May 12th and May 13th, book your flights now, Banff, Alberta. We wanna see you there.
And I'll jump on now that Kathy's broken the ice. I never like to follow Kenny Lamberti ever because I can never match that sort of energy. But I just want to remind everybody that the Best Friends National Conference, we are accepting applications for speakers up until November 19th for our 2022 National Conference in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'll post a link in the chat, but I know everybody's doing some amazing work. Would love to hear about it and would love for you all to be able to share it at our conference. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Brent. A couple more. I'll pause for about 30 seconds in case anybody would like to unmute. All right, awesome. Thank you, folks. Really appreciate those national updates, but let's get right into these presentations. My dear friend Ashley is here, who has really been sort of a development strategy philanthropy mentor for many people, including myself. I know often on these calls, we talk about sort of the what and the why, but we don't often get into the how. And by the how, I mean, how the heck are we going to pay for these programs? And also, I know a lot of people think October is just about wearing flannels and drinking pumpkin spice lattes, but it's also the time to start talking about your end of year strategy. So Ashley, over to you, my friend.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Bobby, for letting me jump on here. And I'm going to share my screen somehow. Share. Cool. this worked this morning. Give me a second. Bobby, do a tap dance.
No worries. It's raining in California. We're working at about 0.75% speed right now. So you're totally fine.
No.
So Jay, as this is getting loaded by Ashley, why don't you give us a little update on how things are going in San Jose? I know Mary gave you a little love earlier on the call.
Oh man, no pressure. Hi, good morning, everyone. Jay Trotta again with the City of San Jose Animal Services. Yeah, it's been a challenging year. I'm sure I'm not alone. We got critical positions that are vacant right now, but our team is really working hard to make sure that we're continuing to save the lives of animals, even though we are, shorthanded. But the teams have been doing great. We're still getting a lot of cats and kittens, but we're dealing with it.
Good stuff. Well, it's good to hear from you. Ashley, if you need a little bit more time, we can totally move to Dr. Jefferson and the second conversation if you want to troubleshoot, or we can wait another minute. No hurry.
You know what? I actually think this conversation would be fantastic following Dr. Jefferson, if that would be possible.
Of course.
Because I think what she's about to share, and then we can bring into the how, I think it would be a great addition.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashley. So we're going to go over to the Dr. Jefferson. I see Heather here. I see Cole here for the role of NPO conversation that we had started last week that we hope to continue today. Our goal today is to make this a discussion. So we want to make sure that we're getting feedback from everyone, not just NPOs. I know that we have a lot of municipal agencies that are partnering with nonprofit organizations as well. And so my goal today is to hold space to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. And I also care not just about what you think, but about how these conversations make you feel. So make sure that you're able to, hold that space and just give us your transparent thoughts. So over to you, Dr. Jefferson.
Cool, thanks. That is an awesome intro and exactly right. This work, I think all of us know, if the pandemic's taught us anything, it's taught us that we need to question everything we're doing and how we're doing it, and to rethink about what we could be doing differently in the future. And so the role of the NPO working group, just as a quick recap, is really charged with figuring out just that. What is the role of the nonprofit organization in the world of animal sheltering? I think we all know how our own nonprofits fit in, but when we think about the cause of animal homelessness and the government's role in taking those animals in, and then the nonprofit's role in either helping to support that government entity or serving completely outside that government entity. It's a really confusing problem. It's not a problem, but really confusing thing to untangle and try to really define what the role of the nonprofit is. And so I wanted to just direct us back to, and we're not going to pull anything up on the screen or anything like that, because we really do want this to be about discussion, but we created a toolkit. And the idea behind the toolkit is to do exactly that. It's really asking all of us to challenge ourselves and to really think about what can we do to get a little bit less comfortable with the thing, a little bit more comfortable with the things we're not comfortable with. So if there's a need in our community or nationally, then how do we start to address that? How do we all have a collective obligation and try to solve for that together and take a little piece of it, rather than any one group trying to take it all on, which we know will never work, because I'm sure that's happened a million times. And so I think that, let me make sure there's nothing else I wanted to say about it, but I guess the underlying premise of all of this is that we really believe that the problem of too many animals coming into shelters and the problem of some of those not getting a fair chance at being saved is solvable. We're seeing it across the country already. We know that our world of too many animals in all of our shelters is going to change eventually in the South as it is in the North. And we also know that, we believe, I should say, that we collectively have the power and resources to not only create the solution to ensuring that that homeless animals are, and especially homeless animals that end up in shelters and have no chance of being adopted, that we can solve for that. And we can solve for that by by tackling the root issues like we're trying to do with Haas, and we can also solve for it with direct intervention. And the thing that the role of the nonprofit organization working group is trying to solve is, how do we do that? If we believe there's enough resources and we believe it's solvable, then how do we create a system that is not duplicating efforts and it's actually leveraging each other in a positive way to spread out the solutions across all of the need? And so I wanted to pass it over to Cole to start off our discussion. Our group was comprised of only 5 people. It's one of the smallest working groups we have, probably because the topic isn't as exciting as other things, but we think it's really interesting. We have Cole Wakefield here. We have Becky Best, Alexandra Furr, and Heather Owen are all on the call to help kind of, I don't know. Cole, I'll pass it over to you.
Well, I think we're going to do Becky's question first.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Becky, why don't you lead us off in discussion and tell us where you're from?
Sure. I'm Becky Best from Houston Pet Set in Houston, Texas. And one of the hot questions that we've been talking a lot about in our group is, how do we balance sustainability of our organizations while also utilizing the resources and reserves that we have to make sure that current needs are being met in our community? And that's something that we're really curious about, how you all approach that in your organizations to make sure you're not sitting on money when, you know, there are needs that are still being unmet, but you've got an eye for the future and making sure that you can continue as an organization. So we would love to hear from some of you about how those conversations take place within your organizations.
And even, is that a conversation that you have with your board of directors? And I know that, you know, only part of the group is running nonprofit organizations that are geared towards solving animal homelessness, but yeah, chime in.
I see Lee with their hand up, but Becky, before Lee speaks up, would you mind just slowly repeating the question one more time for the group?
Sure. How does your organization balance sustainability against progression, really utilizing resources and reserves to create new programs to meet needs?
Thank you. Lee, over to you. And if you don't mind, please introduce yourself, your title, and your organization.
Sure. I'm Lee Harper. I'm the executive director of Kitsap Humane Society, which is near Seattle in Washington. And I've been there for about 6 months and followed a longtime executive director. We are in the middle of a capital campaign to build, it's our phase 2, to build a new veterinary life-saving center to really ramp up our services for folks who are low income and their pets. And we're also looking at a pretty big deficit for next year, because our adoption revenue, which was about a third of our $3.5 million budget, is now much less. And so we're trying to figure out, like, what does the future look like? How much of our reserves do we spend? And how much do we pull into the capital campaign, which, of course, like everybody else, it came, you know, the new numbers came back at 50% more. So we had raised 5 out of 6.5, and now we're 5 out of 9.5. And so it's just, there's a lot of interesting conversations going, like, how much do we pull for operations from our reserves? Can we pull any of that to capital? Do we need to delay that project? And we're also facing, you know, the shortage, we all are, and we're needing to raise wages, and that's not negotiable, right? So we will be drawing from reserves, and that's going to be a big hit. So it's just a lot going on, and we're just having a lot of good conversations, both with staff and the board.
Thanks, Lee. Becky, are you hoping to, or Dr. J, are you hoping to hear from a few people about this?
Yeah, and I was thinking that Heather, I don't know if you, we weren't really planning to present anything. We're working on the on a guideline for this, and Heather's organization actually has a really amazing way to think about reserves. And I don't know, Heather, if you want to give a brief overview of that, of how you and your board do that.
Yeah, I can do that quickly. I think the first question is, for a lot of nonprofits, that you should ask yourselves is, do you have a reserve policy? Do you know what it is? And do you know how you calculated it? for me, the answer was no. And I think because I glazed over during that board meeting, you know, because usually your finance team is going to be who calculates that and figures it out and puts it in place. And like, who am I going to argue with my accountant, right? But I think that finance teams tend to be way more risk averse than a lot of us that implement programs. So we decided to take a look at our reserve policy to make sure that that culture of risk tolerance was woven into our financial processes, and especially how much we have in reserves. So what we found was we had like a really conservative policy. So we had what I would consider to be way too much in reserves. So we went back and recalculated it and talked about it in terms of like, hey, we're saving this money for like a hypothetical rainy day, but it's like pouring outside right now in Chicago, right? Like there's animals that need to be saved right now. So what are we waiting for? And so a couple of things that we did was we reduced the number of months that we have in reserves. We stopped calculating for variable costs, so it's just fixed costs now. And then the last thing we did is we started doing cash analyses every month. You can do this like every quarter too, to be like, do we have more money? And is this just going to go sit in our reserve and we have to wait a year to spend it? Or can we spend it now? So, and then, you know, if you have variable costs that you can do to make sure that you're saving more lives, you can use that like extra money to pour into variable. It doesn't always have to be a fixed cost, like a new hire or a building or anything like that. So that's what we did. And it was really nice because we got to do a bunch of cool projects, some of them larger and some of them smaller, with the money that would have otherwise sat in a rainy day fund.
Heather, it looks like there's a question from Megan in the chat. If you wouldn't mind reading that question before you answered it.
Sure. The question is, did we hire a consultant or someone to come in and do a risk assessment to develop your reserves policy? So when it first was developed, the answer is no. And it's funny because if you just Google like nonprofit reserve policy, it's usually like 3 to 6 months and that's it. So there's not a whole lot of guidance or best practices out there. So I think that, you know, we just went, and probably a lot of you just go with the one that seems the safest, which is usually like more months. So we did an internal process evaluation using our finance team. And I think that that's like an important piece of who's on your team. So we added some new board members that specifically had experience in risk assessment. And no one like had any idea like what the best reserve policy was, but they could at least look at all of our financials from the last couple of years and see like, do we need to be safer or are we doing okay? And I think probably a lot of us in 2020 were like, oh, shoot, you know, we might be losing a lot of our money here. So we got to hang on to it. And then maybe in 2021, you haven't reassessed. And if you did really well in 2020, which I hope you did, we had a really good year, then hopefully the next year you could reassess all of your financial policies to make sure you can spend a little bit more because you're not worried about the economy collapsing right now.
Cool. And, you know, I think another way to phrase this is maybe not talking just about finance, and this isn't just for nonprofits, but also for governments, of how do you balance that in our industry. I don't know of any organization that is comfortable, you know, that is in a place where everything's fine, smooth sailing, all the animals are great, all your people are great, everything's working awesome. And so how does, from anybody's perspective, how do you keep balancing the need for that sustainability, trying to make things great for your employees, trying to make things great for the animals that are in your care, with that, what has until now, I think, felt like an insurmountable amount of need out there? And I think part of what I'm asking is that if we're recognizing now that that need is surmountable, then how do we all take a little bit more of that and get to that place where the entire country is not doing what we've done for the last 100 years? Any thoughts on that? Does anybody take risks that they're sort of like, hope this works out? The quiet group. Okay, well, we have another question, so we don't have to sit here in silence.
Well, Dr. J, the one thing I will say is this is a really interesting conversation, because shout out to Dr. Carly, because I just got an email right now that she joined your NPO working group. So that's a win for you right there.
Awesome. And no, it's not just open. It's not just for NPOs. In fact, it would be great to have government agencies in there, because the next question, Cole, I don't know if you want to just jump into the next question.
Hey, Dr. Jeffers, before you move on, this is Stacy Danes from Long Beach Animal Care Services. And you had to ask the question, do you take risks? Do you just sort of go, hope that works? I'll tell you that my experience here, I'm so glad that this working group exists and that this conversation is being had, because I think that is exactly what is happening in my neck of the woods, is that all of the risk is actually on our animal control shelter. And so we do take risks all the time. We are spending money that we do not have, hoping that donors will give and support the efforts that we're making for individual life saving. So we'll do posts and we'll know that a procedure is 10,000 and we'll do the procedure and cross our fingers and hope. We've implemented a foster care program with no staff, no funding, because it's what's been needed. So we are taking risks sort of constantly. We implemented a behavior rehabilitation program with no funding and no staff. Same with an adoption program and a volunteer program. So I would definitely like to know how to, I guess, operate our municipal shelter or I guess conduct those relationships to help our nonprofit brother and sisters to feel safer taking risks, knowing that we're in the fire and we're beckoning them to come with us.
And I can talk a little bit.
Let's see. We have Annie. We're going to go with Annie first, and then Alexis will come to you, and then Mary, I'd love your comments as well.
I love the risk question. We decided to hire a vet in 2019, and we knew we had the reserves to cover it if things didn't work out. And so then we had a deficit in 2019. And even though I warned the board, they were like, ah, deficit. And then, boy, did it pay off in 2020, because all that vet care ramped up, and it's that steady vet income that is keeping us afloat in these trying times and serving the community the way it needs to be served. So leaping off the cliff can be fun and rewarding.
Thank you, Annie. And Stacy, it looks like you got to hear here from Chris Fitzgerald, and something I would also recommend is we would love your expertise in that working group. So for those that are interested, the link is in the chat, and the more people we can get from municipalities and government organizations, the better that conversation will get. So Alexis, we'll go over to you.
We did take some calculated risks with the infusion of PPP loans. We've been on a really steep growth and transformational trajectory the last 2 years. So we have expanded a lot and have hoped that our community would respond to the Haas model, and we haven't been too disappointed so far. But we went from 0 to 2.5 veterinarians and really started counting on some of our clinic revenue kicking up. We rolled out a lot of our community services. And so we're kind of setting the stage for, we have we invested also in our strategic plan. So we really move forward on a lot of initiatives in this downtime with the PPP cash infusion, and are really trying to position ourselves well to also be starting to be looked at not only as an animal welfare organization, but as part of the health and human services sector as well, because we are working with a lot of agencies, human health agencies, and are hoping that we can get some of that crossover donors as well, who really appreciate how we help people. So it's a calculated risk, and we took some giant steps forward to make some huge impact right up front, and we're kind of banking on our community. Ramping up our communications and banking on them, really helping us pull it through.
Thanks, Alexis. Dr. J, did you have something before going to Mary?
No, go ahead.
Thanks, everybody. So it's interesting to me what we define as risk, because these seem like very unrisky endeavors. What makes them risky is that money has to be devoted to them, to support them. And where does that come from? You know, in my world of the foundation world, we're governed by some rules that have to do with how much money we have to pay out every year and the kinds of things that we can include towards those payouts, and what does that look like. And it's an interesting place to be in as I hear what you all are talking about. Julie Levy just posted something really great that if you've never heard of Voulay, you should definitely check him out. Voulay is sort of the voice of the foundation world, if you will, because he's always poking us to do more, to do better, to do different. And he really defines what that is. And he's an amazing advocate for nonprofits. And so, you know, it's funny, there's a school district in the South Bay. I think it's the Campbell School District that was in the news today. They have an endowment of $48 million, and the teachers are demanding that they increase their wages, increase their benefit payout. And the school district is reluctant to do that because even though $48 million seems like this huge windfall, when they run the numbers, it looks like at some point in the future, they will not be able to pay the pension benefits. So that friction is always present, no matter what field we're in, that we want to save money, we want to have prudent reserves, but we also need to spend money. Jan McHugh Smith put in the chat file that her organization is using their savings endowment to provide a living wage for their workers. I mean, that is, she says, incredibly risky, but so necessary because of the way we operated for so long. So I guess what I'm trying to say is those things that appear risky today will invariably over the next year or 2 years become the way we operate. It will become standard operating. It allows us to change in advance and increase those baselines. Stacey Daines, I love what you're talking about because you have just challenged us all to have relationships with the other organizations in our community, because there are times when municipal organizations can't respond as quickly to ever-changing realities in front of us. So if you have an organization that is more nimble, you can make those kinds of changes to support them. That should be a priority. And when we start to look at these, at the world around us in terms of those opportunities for intersections, for connections, that's where I think we make the biggest case for sustainability.
I know we only have a few minutes left. And Cole, I'd like you to throw out your sort of who's responsible question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it leads right into kind of where the conversation went. And that was what we wanted to figure out is how do we, who is responsible for knowing, planning, and orchestrating how the needs are met in a community? Who is you know, in your community, what group or organization is supposed to figure that out? And then how do we figure out what resources should be distributed between government and nonprofits? Some government agencies are very limited on what they're able to do because of regulations or laws or city councils, while others have more latitude. So what's going on in one community may be different. The needs in one community and what a nonprofit needs to do in one community may be different than another community. So who's responsible for figuring out where the gaps are for nonprofits to fill? And then how do we build those relationships so that nonprofits know those gaps and are helping their municipal shelters and government or agencies fill those gaps? I don't know. So that's what we're asking.
I'll just chime in, and if I can, and say in 2000, the Massachusetts Animal Coalition was founded basically because of that, trying to find the gaps in the states. It's a nonprofit organization. So it did start out that way. So, but it has municipal representation in there. It's, got private veterinarians involved and that kind of thing. So, I think it can be a nonprofit entity or it could be a municipal entity, but I think it is very beneficial to have each state to have have some sort of representation organization that way, or even, in larger states, several groups like that.
I think just to add to what you just said, Stacey, there's a similar organization in Washington that does that sort of role, but I know there's a lot more that can be done in terms of cooperation and finding these gaps. But I know that organization in Washington has just started helping organizations coordinate in terms of intaking animals into our state from areas with high need. So, I think we're beginning to see some real practical kind of outputs from it, which I'm happy to see.
Well, I know we're pretty much out of time, but we do have one poll that we're just hoping to get a feel for where people are on taking on a little more, which probably sounds extremely exhausting. And this is geared towards nonprofit organizations. Again, sorry about that.
As that poll is being filled out, Steve, I thought I saw you unmute for a second. Were there any closing comments that you had, or was that an accident?
No, I mean, I just, that is one of the barriers that, that we have, that there's really no nonprofit in our area, no NPO in our area that can support us as a municipality. We are working towards that. These groups are amazing because we are starting to network with a lot of other NPOs out there. But as a county, that's what we're lacking right now. And obviously we cannot intake and do it all as a municipality. We just don't have the funding for it. But this right here, these groups are amazing. And that's what I was just going to comment on, because we're networking, and people are seeing where the gaps are.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I think that the beauty of this is sort of the diversity in experience and thought. We have nonprofit organizations, we have municipal organizations, we have foundational organizations. So this is the purpose of the movement, right, is to collaborate. So Dr. J, I'll toss it over to you. And anytime you want us to share that poll, Allison can prompt it for you.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and share it right now? Okay, so the answers are, for what does your nonprofit organization need in order to pull or save more challenging pets or to prevent them from coming into the government shelter? It looks like the vast majority want to, but don't have the resources to do it. So this speaks very much to the idea that if we can figure out how to, I don't know what the right term is, it's sort of spread the wealth, but really it's more not duplicate efforts, I think, is become more efficient in how we work together. I think that we can make a lot of progress. And I know that in our sustainability working group, there was the thought from Heather Camisa about trying to figure out maybe a national platform to quantify needs and to really make needs of organizations more transparent, and so that it's not so much you should be helping them, it's more here's where you can jump in. And so I think that that is a really excellent idea, and I don't know how to do it, but I thought I'd throw it out here at this group because I know we have some different software companies and programmers on the call as well. But we really do need that. I think a lot of people want to help, but don't know where to help and don't know what they need to grow their resources to do in order to help. So that's it from us, and hopefully we'll be back at some time in the future with more information. And like I said, anybody can join our group. We'd welcome more participants.
Thank you, Dr. Jefferson and the rest of the group. I think the beauty of having only 5 members in a group, since we're so data driven, is that I can say that we've had an 80% increase in participation because 4 new people have signed up since being on this call. But since we have very limited time, Ashley, we're going to toss it right back over to you.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Brian and Bobby. Whatever your name is this morning, thank you so much. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to share, view, present.
Perfect.
Awesome. So here's what's happening. I presented earlier this week to the Haas Philanthropy Job Alike group about the value of strategy in building their year-end roadmap. So Bobby asked me kind of to take it forward. And I think Dr. Jefferson, what you're just talking about with 57% saying they need additional resources to be able to do the work, this is the time and the thought to be able to put this forward. So anytime I talk about strategy, of course, Herb's famous quote comes up. So I always want to address it first. You guys are doing things. You're doing a lot of things. In fact, you're doing so many things. And then on top of doing all of those things, you're answering a bazillion questions. But I want to encourage you to think about this time right now and to take time today to be thinking about how you can be productive instead of busy, especially when it comes to your revenue generation activities, whether you call it fundraising, development, or philanthropy. Think about how, especially as you're heading into the year-end fundraising, that you can be productive instead of just busy. Go screen. Fabulous. So here's a little thing that I love showing. In fact, our friend Alice is wandering in the woods and comes across the lovely, beautiful purple cat, Cheshire cat. And Alice says, well, tell me where I should go from here. And the Cheshire cat says, it depends on where you want to go. And Alice says, it doesn't really matter. And he says, then it doesn't matter which way you go. Unless you have a strategy, which is really looking at that roadmap, unless you have a strategy and a clear vision, you're not going to get from one place to the other. In fact, thinking about year-end fundraising, did you know that 27% of nonprofits raise up to 50% of their annual funds during their year-end ask? And that is right now, year-end, October, November, December. And in fact, 31% of all annual giving happens in the month of December alone. And 12% of that happens in the last 3 days of the entire year. But don't get too worried. Not yet. There's still time. Almost 54% of nonprofits start planning right now. So I wanted to come on this call today and say, you have big visions. You have big goals of what you want to accomplish in the next year. And we've just heard so many about them. When it comes to your fundraising, please take a moment right now and be strategic about how you want to move forward, how you want to talk to your donors, how you want to share your vision for where you want to go so that they can be part of your work. I'm going to share 3 different strategic planning, a mild, a medium, and a spicy with you. Now, if you're a mild, maybe you're a one-person group, you're a small organization, and you are doing a little bit of everything. Maybe a medium spicy is, right in the middle, you've got a team, but you don't really have a strategy. If you're a hot and spicy one, put in the chat what your best strategic fundraising and philanthropy plan is for us. So let's jump in. So I believe that every good strategy has 3 points to it: and ask, a plan, and execute. And when you're thinking about fundraising specifically, I want you to think first, asking about data. You can take qualitative data, which is great, includes what worked last year, how many donors did you get, what kind of response rate, what was the average gift. You can do some segmentation, all of that great. But it's also important to know that qualitative data is data as well. So think about asking the question, what worked well last year? If we think back to the last 3 months of 2020, and it was, or 2020, what worked well last year? Was there a piece that went out that had a lot of good heartfelt stories? Or did something not work well? I was talking to a colleague the other day, and he was telling me about how much he hates Giving Tuesday and how it never works for their organization. And I said, then why are you doing it this year? And he said, well, I have to do it. And I said, you don't have to do anything. You choose to spend your resources on something. And so I encouraged him to think about what new ideas he could do with his limited resources instead of participating in Giving Tuesday. And we were able to brainstorm some ideas. Second, create your plan. Set some goals, make them smart, define your activities, and build your timeline. I think when we think about planning, we're really good at the activities part, right? We put sticky notes up on our walls about activities that we want to host or people we want to call, but we don't really do a good job of setting a goal. Why are we taking the time and effort right then and there to make that, to do that? So, okay, great. Let's send out an email to all of our donors. But what's the purpose of the email? Are we trying to recruit more donors at a lower level? Are you trying to make a soft ask so you can make a harder ask later? Define your purpose, and your ask is going to have a lot more power to it. And then timeline, list your activity, list the date, list the staff member or volunteer who needs to be involved and what resources. And that way, when it comes time to make that activity happen, you're ready to go. And then finally, do the work, work the plan, evaluate the work. Do the work. Work the plan. Working the plan means don't give up on it. Okay. When all of those questions and ideas and things come onto your desk, don't forget that you made this plan and this plan needs to happen, because up to 50% of your annual revenue is on the line in these 3 months. Now's the time to do it. And then evaluate your work so that you're prepared for next year when it comes around in the same conversation, or better yet, so that you're ready when it comes to January. You can evaluate how things work and put a plan in action for your team and your fundraising efforts going through 2022. Don't wait until next year to put those plans in place. Go back. If you are more of that medium level spicy kind of chapter or organization, maybe expanding your activities, create a SWAT plan, expand not just your opinion, but fellow staff, key donors, volunteers. Maybe outline your activities based on your audiences. So think about your donor pyramid. What level of the donor pyramid are you communicating to all of those levels, from planned giving at the top to first-time donors at the bottom? And then execute, do the work, work the plan, evaluate your work. If you're a hot and spicy chapter, let me tell you how I personally prefer. This is the strategic model that I prefer using. It's by T.L. Whelan, and it's fantastic. And really, it kind of follows the same strategy. There's the ask, gathering of your data. There's the plan, the strategy formation, and there's your execution, your strategy implementation. If you have any questions as well about T.L. Whelan, about this plan, I'm happy to share. We went through this as a development team. So I'm not talking just organizational wide, but as a development team, we use this feedback and this strategic planning model to come up with our 2021 efforts and what it looks like. Go forward. Go back. So in closing, a couple of pretty little slides here. If you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. 6-year-olds have a very short attention span, so make sure your strategy is clear and that you can consistently say it to a 6-year-old. Second, you need a vision first. And hearing the discussion that just happened with Dr. Jefferson and the whole group, you have a clear vision for where you want to go with your organizations. Do you have a clear philanthropic vision? If so, your strategy will pour from that. Only difference between where you are, where you want to be, is the steps you haven't taken. Year-end fundraising is the time to make that happen. And as a shout out to my fellow co-leader of the philanthropic group, Brian Doherty from San Diego Humane Society, who we presented about philanthropic culture in your organization. Here's a quote by the infamous Peter Drucker. We can have conversations about Peter and what you think, but I do agree with this statement, which is culture eats strategy for breakfast. Remember, your strategy only works when you engage those around you to be part of that work. That includes your volunteers, your staff, and your board. A shout out for my philanthropic Haas Java-like group. We made a 48-page toolkit. It goes through culture of philanthropy as well as strategy, on down to very specific activities and tactics that I look forward to sharing with you. I did a short little bit.ly there for you so you can take a screenshot. Take a look at it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to put you in touch with the person who wrote each section. More than 20 animal welfare philanthropy professionals took part in this toolkit. And if you have any questions about strategy, about philanthropy, get in touch with me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you or put you in touch with one of my colleagues who can. Just want to emphasize, spend 30 minutes today, tomorrow, Monday, thinking about what your philanthropic strategy will be for year-end fundraising. It's going to be worth your time. It's going to be worth your efforts. Bobby, back to you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And you know what? I'm not going to even open this up for questions because there's no question that y'all should be signing up for that job alike, because your teams can meet with Ashley and Brian Doherty and about 40 other philanthropy professionals twice a month to be asking these questions. So to close us out, I'm going to toss it over to Mary Smith, and a big thank you from me.
Thanks, everybody. What an incredible day. Ashley, Dr. J, thank you guys so much. Kenny and our care family, so appreciate the high energy start we had for the day. And all of you, let's face it, after today's meeting, if words were dollars, we would all be millionaires. So let's just keep doing what we do. But remember, there's people involved in the equation all the time. And what we can do to be better human beings is something that we should be thinking about just as much as we think about the animals in our care. So have a great weekend. Be safe, stay healthy. Bye.